Hi, everyone. It's Lin Bouthillier from linbouthillier.com, and I'm a certified trauma recovery coach, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of my ongoing series, Monogamous at 13. I changed my camera angle at the very last second because just as I was starting to record, my little Hazel came to visit, and she wanted to sit in what's usually considered Nemo's spot, where little brother likes to sit when I make videos, but today Hazel decided to claim the spot, which is kind of unusual. And I don't often get to put her on camera, but there she is. And I thought you might enjoy having a peek at little Hazel. Little Hazel has a full tummy. She's just been switched a couple weeks ago to the farmer's dog food, and she's 12 and a half. And she seems just as spry and spunky as she was maybe 2 years ago at age 10. So I can't make a commercial for that dog food, but I can tell you my experience with it is that my littles have been just doing super great so far on that. And my little Hazel seems to be a whole lot more settled than she used to be. I don't know if that's coincidence, but she just seems to really be able to settle now, where before we were having a lot of times throughout the day where we were in crisis mode, where she just couldn't settle and she just didn't know what to do with herself to get herself content and comfortable. Big change since then, and she isn't doing as much of that barking for no noticeable reason whatsoever. So it might all be in my head, but it could also be that little Hazel is feeling better from her change in dog food. So anyways, she's not too interested in saying hello right now. So I'll take care of that part with you. Hello. Really glad that you're joining me today. I have to get my camera angle back the way it was when I was just about to start and she hopped up. So I'm fussing with pillows right now because I'm still dealing with a chest wall injury. It's very painful, and I did something to move the wrong way, and I pulled some muscles. Ended up having to go for X-rays a couple of days ago because I honestly didn't know if I broke my own ribs. I had tripped over a dog bed and taken a tumble, and I fell onto the soft dog bed. The dog bed is made of a crib mattress with a special canvas dog safe covering over it. And I just moved wrong, and I tripped over something like my own foot, and I knew I couldn't right myself, and down I went. And it happened when I was just putting laundry away, and there's a dog bed on the floor in my bedroom because my dogs can sleep on my bed, but they can also choose to sleep on the floor on that comfortable thing that is theirs. So I think for a few more days, I might be feeling this way, but I've been doing a lot more resting and sitting and being really kind to myself, being compassionate and empathetic with myself, and giving myself, just lavishing self-care on me because I'm injured right now. And I take care of me the way I want to be taken care of. If I could have a partner that was super close with me that wanted to take care of me, these are the things that I would be longing for that partner to do while I don't feel good. I do them for myself, and I do them as much as I can. And I do that for my own health and well-being. Makes me feel incredibly grounded. And as a trauma survivor and a trauma recovery coach, anything that I can show you that I do for myself, for my own well-being, that is healthy, and it's solid information about what can actually help, what can work for you as well, let's say, just call it an adaptive coping mechanism. So I had this incident happen. It was moderately traumatic because the pain was just off the charts. Chest wall injuries can be extremely uncomfortable. If you're not sure what that is, chest wall injury means the musculature around the rib cage. My injury is right at the bottom of my rib cage, and it actually causes noticeable pain and tenderness in the lower ribs. And it is at the front and at the side. And it is very difficult to to relax, because we can't shut off our breathing, and those muscles do not get a break. 24/7, we are breathing. And so any chest wall injury that we get is always affected by our breathing. The longer it goes on, the more we can become frustrated, depressed, anxious, irritated, irritable. And it summed up in just the most basic terms, we don't feel good. And right now I just don't feel good. And so what I can do for myself is, when I'm healing from something like this, I can share with my viewers what I'm doing to take care of myself. So I'll start with that first today. Okay. Now there is going to be a trigger warning on this. There is a trigger warning on this video. I am not going to be describing horrendous abuse, like graphic, gross, nasty abuse. But today I am going to be speaking about narcissistic abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and elder abuse, because it did take place with my mom as one of the targets. But I'll get to that in just a moment. I'm just going to share with you that the things that I'm doing to lavish self-care on myself right now are, I bought myself beautiful Bigelow tea, a box of Bigelow tea, and it is chai spiced tea, and it is divine. I love it. And so whenever I want some, I can brew myself a cup of Bigelow tea. It does have low caffeine in it, but I just brew it at half strength, and I let myself just sip on that. I've added it with ice into my water bottle. It is absolutely wonderful. I love it. And it's a good way for me to get my water in with no calories. So I'm doing two things at one time, soothing myself with chai and getting my water intake. Small amount of caffeine, I'm allowed to have that, but I don't do that all day. I cannot drink caffeine all day. It's just, I let go of that a long time ago. All right, so the other thing I've been doing is taking extra care of my skin. It soothes me to take care of my skin. I've been using essential oils. If I'm going to be home, like right now, I'm doing a video, of course I have my lights lit, my candles lit, but I have other candles around the house. And since I don't have cats that could get, their tail in a candle or in a flame, or, knock it over, or things like that, it's safe for me where I live to have actual candles, and I love them. So sometimes on the bathroom counter, I'll light one, and mainly because that's where I will put one that has a scent that I want to fill that end of the house. And another thing that I've been doing for my self-care, is to make a little bit more time for luxuriant reading. What does that mean? It means I'm taking a little time to prepare the space where I'm going to sit down and read. It means that I'm going to get all my little nesting things ready and put them there for my own comfort. And I'm going to have, like today, right now, the cushiest pillows behind me, so I can support my body in a way that hurts this area that is a chest wall injury less. And I can make myself have that feeling that I fussed over myself a little bit. I fussed over myself and made myself the center of my attention for a few minutes to get comfortable, so that I can sit down and read a book, not just sitting, wherever, but in a place where I have supported myself and given myself nurture, and every little thing is there for me. I've got a quilt, got my comfy pillows, got my book, got my drink, I've got everything. I've got a little grounding tool in my hand, and I've got on something cozy on my feet. It was chilly in the evening, and I just put on some woolen socks, and I'm just soaking up how much my inner being loves to nurture me. And so, as a certified trauma recovery coach, I love sharing that with you, because it helps me to give you little, tiny, easy to digest ideas. And it also reaffirms that if I am worthy of self-care, every single human being is worthy of self-care. And when we are significantly affected by trauma, one of the things that does have a tendency to go away or to back way off is our feeling of worthiness for our own care or the care from others. So today's topic, I'll move on to today's topic. This is special episode number 144. And the topic today is, oh my gosh, this one was difficult for me, but I'm going to speak about it. It's about having an interaction, long-term interactions with a narcissist who is a professional, the professional narcissist, meaning they're not in your family. They might be visiting your home. They could be for any reason, might be a visiting nurse. It could be someone who does your lawn care. It could be your attorney. Could be your accountant. It could be a manager at a place where you do business. But it's somebody who is outside of the family, but they're inside of your experience. And you have to deal with them. Whatever's going on, you can't just walk away and say, well, I'll just get this need met somewhere else. What we're speaking about is a situation where that person is highly narcissistic, and they're also not someone that you can do without at the time. So you don't have a choice. You have to deal with them. And there aren't too many times in our lives, I don't think, where our hands are tied and there's just absolutely no way around this and we have to deal with this person. It might happen to us multiple times in our life. But for the person who's outside of our family that we have to deal with over and over and over and over again, usually those situations are fairly temporary. And I'll give you the example that I'm speaking about today. Today I'm speaking about a highly narcissistic nurse, a licensed practical nurse, and she worked at the place where my mother was a resident in an assisted living home. And I did have two experiences there with two separate nurses that had to, what they were doing was so grievous that it had to be addressed with management. But sometimes, I'm going to skip ahead for just a second here, sometimes the person in management that you go to is also a professional narcissist. So I have my grounding stone in my hand. It's a new one. It's a really, really nice, smooth little pebble from Lake Erie. I have a whole collection of them. I've had these for years, but this is my little pebble today. It's really dark gray color and it's smooth as silk, and I love it. Love the feel of it in my hand. If you have not brought yourself into a state of anchored and groundedness, now would be an excellent time to do so. If you don't know how to bring yourself into a state of anchored and groundedness, please go to my video list and for my channel and look for special episode number 57 entitled How to Prevent and Handle Triggers. It will help you. And then if you feel up to it after that, come on back and watch the rest of this video. But I don't want any harm to come to you from feeling unsafe or to be triggered, to be in a state of dissociation or an autonomic nervous system response of fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or any combinations of them, or to be having emotional flashbacks that are very uncomfortable. I don't want that for you. I want you to be as relaxed, calm, grounded, and comfortable as you could possibly be while you're viewing my material, because that's the state we need to be in for our healing to come. And so when we bring ourselves into that state, we call that self-care. That is a beautiful form of self-care. And we try to bring ourselves into that state as often as we can, because recovery comes to us in very small pieces, in small moments, and when we are in a state of emotional, psychological safety. And that's what we're speaking about when we talk about grounding. All right, so I'm ready to begin. And this is going to need a little bit of backstory, but I'll try to get through it so I don't bore you to tears. My mother, in her in her 80s needed to go to assisted living. And her doctor said she could not live alone anymore, and he recommended an assisted living. He said, I don't recommend the individual place, but I recommend that she goes to an assisted living. She is at that level of care now. And so I was her healthcare proxy at the time. And my sister, as I've spoken about, insisted that she was still the healthcare proxy, even after my mom had changed it. But that was a different story that I've spoken about. But three of her daughters went together, and we went from place to place looking at assisted living homes. And we found one, and we knew right away it was the right place for her. What we didn't know was that there was an employee who worked there, who worked on the unit where she was going to live. And the unit had about 30 residents on that. There were much larger units. There was, 2 units that had probably 70 to 80 residents living in them. But my mom's unit was the smallest unit, and it was lovely. If I was going to be entering an assisted living home, the setup that she had there, I would have found absolutely delightful. And I know that might sound a little over the top, but the common area was lovely. Sliding glass doors, view out into nature. The rooms were clean. They were large enough. Bathroom was wonderful. They had an ice cream parlor. They had menus out every single day for the residents to come and walk up to a table. And if it was lunchtime, before they walk into the door of the dining room, wrapped in cellophane are 2 plates. One is the first lunch choice, and the other one is the second lunch choice. And if you don't like either of the beautiful chef prepared meals that are on those plates, if you're not, neither one of them appeals to you, there's a menu on every table where you can put in your order. You can order a la carte off of this menu and create your own meal. And so there was no limit on how much you could do that. If you did that every single day for a whole year, if you just rejected that the meals were out there, nobody'd say a word to you. Perfectly fine. And that was so with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And next door to the cafeteria was one of the cutest ice cream parlors I've ever seen. They had beautiful, gorgeous extended front porch, 2 gazebos on the property with benches in them, and concrete walkways for people who walk with walkers, or people who just walk unassisted, or to be pushed in a wheelchair, all the way around the entire campus, going through sections of beautiful manicured lawn, going through sections where there are trees overhanging from the tree line on the side, a section that's near a beautiful pond, and a section that was near a little bit of pine forest. And then you could see a little bit of a subdivision close by, but it was very, very easy on the eyes. The place was just absolutely gorgeous to look at, gorgeous to walk through. And I got my mom outside in the wheelchair that I purchased for her multiple times. Why do I mention that I purchased a wheelchair for her? It's insignificant to the story, right? But it'll help you understand the stress level. When I say my sister and her spouse purchased a wheelchair right away when my mom went to assisted living, because she believed still she could not process that she was let go of her healthcare proxy duties by my mother. She was still POA, but she could not process that she had been dismissed as healthcare proxy, and that my mother had chosen of her own volition to choose me. And so when we enrolled her that day, I gave them the healthcare proxy form, kept a copy for myself, gave it to them. It was in her chart. But this sister notified everybody through the group text, we just went and bought mom a wheelchair. But the management says we're not allowed to keep it in her room. So we have to keep it at our house. And if anybody wants to take mom to an appointment or take her out for dinner, take her to their house, whatever you want to do with mom, if you want to use the wheelchair, because the facility is not a nursing home. It does not have a whole bunch of wheelchairs that are usable for the residents. Assisted living has a few wheelchairs, but there's, it just happens to be much better if you purchase your own. So she's letting us know that there is now a wheelchair and it's at their home, and we can feel free to call them, ask if we can borrow it, come and pick it up and put it in our vehicle, and then bring it back. But it has to be cleaned before you bring it back to their house. Now, I don't have a huge problem with that, but I have a huge problem with knowing my own siblings' history of being obsessed with cleanliness. I mean, obsessed. It's a trauma response. It's a perfectionism trauma response. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism to trauma as well. But what I'm saying in this situation with the wheelchair was, I did not want to go through the constant worry and getting phone calls and texts. Hey, you brought back a wheelchair that wasn't clean enough, and you can get your ass over here and clean it properly now. I wasn't dealing with that. There's not a chance in the world that, as me, and I've already established in my videos that in my family of origin, I was one of the scapegoated siblings. Most definitely scapegoated sibling. And so I knew that this was a recipe for emotional disaster for me, and I just wasn't playing. I was not going to be engaging in the we hold power and control over you because we have something you want, you come and get it, and then when you try to return it to us, you are not going to be able to satisfy our need for how spotlessly clean this thing must be. So I purchased my own. Solved that problem, right? So I never put any restrictions on it. When I went to management and I said, I bought a wheelchair for my mother, but my sibling told me, my sister told me that you don't allow wheelchairs to be kept in the residents' rooms, that they have to be kept off-site, and you just have to bring it in with you when you're going to use it. And she started laughing, and I mean laughing, like a belly laugh, like, oh my God. And I said, it's not a rule, is it? And she said, no, it's not. It's ridiculous. And I felt a little bit humiliated. And she wasn't telling me that I'm gullible and stupid. No, she wasn't trying to hurt me at all. She was the nicest person. But I think she was worried that she just kind of made me feel that way. And I kind of laughed it off. And I'm like, you know what? I didn't have a direct confrontation with her, and I didn't want to go bugging management about silly little questions. But it didn't sit right with me as the truth the entire time. It never felt like that's the truth. So she said, no, your mom can have a wheelchair in her room. It doesn't even have to be folded up. It doesn't have to go in her closet. She can have a wheelchair in her room anytime, and there's never going to be any problem with it. So don't even worry about that anymore. And I said, okay. But I never went to the family and said, you are not allowed to touch the wheelchair that I've bought for mom. You are not allowed to take it out of the building. None of that garbage. No, I never said a word. And I thought whoever comes to visit her will be delighted to find her wheelchair in her room with her name on it, and her little, it's a wheelchair bag that I sewed that was on the back, held between the handles. And it just held all of her supplies that she would need to take with her. And it was a very nice setup for her. But there was friction and tension in the whole process of her being there right out of the gate. One sibling wanted to still remain in charge of her care when she wasn't. And there was also that same sibling was orchestrating everyone in the family to do as she said. She wanted complete control in the situation. So I'm already dealing with one highly, highly narcissistic person and their spouse in this situation. And then what happens is over time, I begin to recognize that there is a nurse that works there who has very, very similar behavior qualities to my sibling, high narcissistic traits. And she's a medical professional, and she's also having extremely poor boundaries with with the residents that she is taking care of during her shifts. I worked in nursing support in a nursing home, in a skilled nursing facility, in a health related facility, and also in a hospital. And so I've had quite a bit of experience, well over a decade, about 12 years experience of being in nursing support. And I was paying attention when they taught us that you cannot blur the roles here. You can't be taking care of someone in a narcissistic capacity, in a medical, role, at the same time as holding a friendship role. The idea is if somebody who is one of your friends comes in to live here, that's an already established friendship. But you can't be seeking out people here to be your friends. There won't be making personal phone calls to their room. There won't be taking them out for the day to go do something fun, to take them out for dinner. No matter how much you want them to have a person in their life who is interacting with them as like a surrogate for family. If they don't have family, or if their family doesn't come to see them, you cannot insert yourself into the role of being their surrogate daughter or surrogate friend, or somebody to help manage their healthcare decisions or anything. You cannot do that. It is just absolutely not allowed, because it blurs the lines of the professional role, and it causes confusion for the resident. And it also is just simply goes against the code of ethics. And so the individual that I'm speaking about today did not in any way honor the code of ethics and the general guiding principles, I guess you would call them, for doing nursing work. And that would apply to any person who works in any capacity in a care home. I think there's nothing wrong with being friendly. Friendly is absolutely lovely. But when it gets to be so personal that you are calling that resident on your time off just to chat, or if you are bringing your relatives in to visit in their room, coming in to introduce your spouse to this person, making a special trip to the care home just to hang out with this individual who has family who visits quite regularly, and even if they didn't, it's still blurring the lines of professional and personal. And so some of you who are watching this might be saying, hey, you know what, Lynn, I don't agree with you. I think that if a person is lonely and then they're in a care home and one of the staff members has a day off and they want to go, get them in the wheelchair, get them dressed up warm, get them in the wheelchair and take them out for a ride around the place, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because that person deserves to go. And I will tell you, from having been in that situation where somebody is overstepping their role and blurring the boundaries of the role and are highly narcissistic and to the point of being abusive, the family does not welcome it. And they have every right not to welcome it. And it's completely unprofessional to be insinuating yourself into the life of a person who, quite frankly, wouldn't be able to sign any legal contracts. They wouldn't be able to speak for themselves in a court of law. They cannot speak for themselves on behalf of their own medical decisions, because they have impairments from dementia. And so it's also there can be highly, highly manipulative people who find that all those details to be kind of convenient. It gives me the right to do this for this person, because I see it as anybody who wants to step in and take care of them, or take care of them just in a really inappropriate way, has carte blanche to do it, because they're lonely, and because I'm so kind, and because I'm compassionate. And maybe your family doesn't quite step up to the plate enough. And it can be very shaming, especially for the children who come, the adult children who come nearly daily to visit. Some of them came never, or once or twice in the entire time for a few years that she'd been there. But she went in at age 82 and she passed away at age 87, my mom. Well, this person began to be a little bit more emboldened a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more with me. And she started doing really inappropriate things in the public spaces with other employees watching, but there might be 2 aides on the unit. And for that shift, she's in charge of them because she's the nurse on the unit. And they are nursing support. So whatever she asks them to do, they have an obligation to do if it's ethical. But I began to have an issue when the friendliness of this nurse crossed a line, and it began to feel extremely uncomfortable. And then my mom started to give me hints and clues, like she'd be making a face at me silently in the lounge going, like, if that nurse was doing the things that she did, and as soon as she stood up and turned her back, my mom would be going like this, which was just her saying, she's too much, I can't handle this. Well, for today, I'm going to call this nurse Gina. Okay, and Gina was quiet a lot of times, and at times she could be very outspoken. And when I speak about her narcissism, what I'm speaking about is saying such inappropriate things to my mom in front of the other residents and their visitors that it was so cringeworthy. The other people in the room who were hearing it and focused, some people might have been watching Jeopardy or whatever, but she would say something and it would be so inappropriate that some heads would turn. And I knew that other people were picking up on it. But one of them was, when I got there, if my mom was already in the lounge, right where the nurse's desk is, big TV, lots of entertainment in there, plenty of space for everybody. If my mom was sitting in that room when I arrived, I'd take my things to her room and then come back and, offer her a drink or snack or both, and then have a seat next to her and just watch television with her for a while before we go to her room. And it started to be a routine thing where this nurse would come over and she would say hi to me in kind of a hi sort of way. And then she would immediately turn to my mom, who I call in the videos, I call her Eloise. Gina would turn to Eloise and say, well, there's my favorite resident. How are you doing? Can I get you anything? And this is the part that some of you will find really distasteful. She would make a clicking sound at my mom. If my mom said, actually, I'm okay for now, I couldn't ask for a thing. I'm very comfortable. There's nothing that I need. I'm just visiting with my daughter. And she would look at her and say, okie dokie. Okie dokie. She did this double click thing. Clicking at somebody. I've seen people do that with horses. I've seen people do that with dogs. As a sound that means come along. Now, when I was training my dogs to follow just the most basic commands, they understand that when I'm out with them and they're lingering a little bit too long on a scent or whatever, and it's time for us to move on. We're going to walk again now. And they don't want to come. My expression to get them walking again is come, come. If I say come, come, that means we're walking. And they know that. They immediately, almost every time. But some people make a sound at dogs that means come on, let's go. But this woman was clicking at my mother, winking at her and going, and I could not figure out why on earth is this person thinking that she should be doing that to an adult woman or man, a resident in a care home. And this just went on and on and on. And some of you may be saying, well, she's a narcissist. She was trying to get under your skin. But she was trying to ingratiate herself to my mother so intensely that she began to hyper focus on my mom and saying in front of a lounge full of people, how's my favorite resident doing? You're my favorite. And then she would come up to her and she'd say, Eloise, who's my favorite? And it would just make me feel sick inside. And my mom didn't want to say me in front of all these other people. My mom didn't want to have any kind of special treatment there. And she certainly didn't want to have anyone in the room or in the facility feeling less than because the nurse is hyper focusing on her and calling her her favorite over and over and over again. It's like the same feeling when we're a child and we're in a classroom, and if the teacher says, who wants to come up to the board? Oh, my favorite student, Lin. Lin's coming up to do this math problem on the board. Since she's my favorite, we would all be horrified at that. Nobody got punched or slapped or kicked or hurt, set on fire or burned. Nobody got any of that. I'm sorry for using such violent language. It was really insensitive of me, and I apologize. But what I'm pointing out is the point I was trying to make, and I did it really awkwardly, is that when somebody is engaging in a behavior, and it's gross to everybody that can hear it. None of us wants to be singled out as the worst person there, but nobody wants to be singled out as the favorite either, because that comes with all kinds of social awkwardness as well. And when you're saying that in a room full of people who may have dementia and other medical, health issues, mental health issues, emotional, psychological issues, the unprofessionalness of this highly narcissistic and insensitive nurse isn't pausing to think about, my mother is not the only resident in the room. And everybody else is hearing this day after day after day. And maybe when I'm not there, she's saying it to another resident, but it's still inappropriate if she is. Any person who lives in a care home should not have any staff member there whatsoever saying the words, I love you, which she did. If I was visiting with my mom, and calling them my favorite, it's just off the top. I meant to say that's just over the top of inappropriate verbal, language. But there was another thing that she would do, which is if she would be watching me from the desk, she'd be sitting, taking care of meds, passing meds and doing minor treatments, eye drops and things like that for residents in the lounge. And I'm just settled in for the evening. I'm gonna be there from like 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. when my mom gets ready for bed. And we're just hanging out and having our usual evening, which was quite enjoyable most of the time. And she knows I'm sitting in the chair next to my mom. But while we're in the middle of a conversation, and there might be a few other people on the other side of the lounge that are watching TV, but we're being quiet and not being intrusive or interruptive with anybody. Instead of coming over to give my mom her medication right in front of her and handing it to her and handing her her drink, a little bit of water so she could take her pills. She would sit on the arm of my mom's chair, the one that's on the opposite side of the chair. And then this way, she can be really close to my mom. She puts her arm around her shoulder and says, I love you, right? You know that I love you. I love you more than anybody else in the world. You know that, right? Now, she was doing this to get under my skin. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. She was intentionally being antagonistic. And some of you will say, that's not antagonism, saying that you love somebody. Yes, it is when it's completely inappropriate to do it. In the context of, this is a care home resident, she's in the presence of one of her children, and getting in between that conversation to interrupt it with, here's your pills, that's necessary. But after the pills are taken, to sit down on the arm of the chair, put your arm around that resident and just cling with them physically and saying, I love you, right? You know how much I love you? I love you more than anybody in the world. And I'm thinking, you have a spouse and you have children. You've already told me about these people. I've seen your spouse. Why? Because you bring your spouse into the building to spend time with my mother. I couldn't figure that out. Why on earth are you bringing your spouse in here to visit my mother? Because what she was telling me in privacy is, I don't want to know her damn family. Her. And my mom's word for it was, she is so oppressive. She gets right in your space. She touches you all the time. And our word for it, people my age would say, I'm creeped out by this person. This person is stomping on my boundaries. We're lighting them on fire, and when they're ashes, it's kicking them all around. This person does not know her place and does not understand how to appropriately interact with a care home resident. Well, that was the beginning of the inappropriateness. That's just scratching the surface. Then she started to want to control me. And by that, I mean, when I signed my mother into hospice, they told me that she would probably be there for a few more months. And then at some point, as her disease progressed, and she was coming into late stage Alzheimer's. And they said, and she was comorbid with several other illnesses as well. But so they said she's eventually going to need to go to a skilled nursing facility, and we'll have Care Team 7 of hospice still taking care of her wherever she goes. She will still always have that no matter where she lives. But our staff is assisted living staff. They're not skilled nursing staff. And when she begins to need a higher level of care, you are going to have to move her. And so since you're the healthcare proxy, we're letting you know today, we're giving you the information. It's time to start looking at facilities. Go visit them. Make appointments to go have a tour, go in, and then also make your own drop-in appearances and see if there's a difference in the way you're treated. It's one of the things that they suggest that you do when you're going to put a loved one into a different facility. So I started doing that. And one night when that nurse was on, when Gina was on, I said, she said, what's the matter? You look really down tonight. You look like something's bothering you. Right there, it's inappropriate. If I have a frowny face or if I look sad, she is not my friend, and she's not my personal support system. She is my mom's nurse. The blurring of the roles is so extremely common with narcissistic people. And so she said, I said, no, I'm good. I'm fine. No, don't worry about me. I'm just fine. Well, a few minutes later, she comes by and she says, well, I'm really bothered that you look so down tonight. You can tell me what's happened. Why don't we have a talk? And I wanted to do anything to just make her go away. And I did something that would reinforce her doing this to me more. And I recognized it as soon as I did it, but I couldn't slurp it back in. And they said, well, as you know, mom's been on hospice for a little while now, and they came to me and told me that it's time for me to start looking for a skilled nursing facility for her, because she's not quite there yet, needing that level of care, but she will be soon. And they said, we can't even make a recommendation to you for which one, but if you come to us and say, have you heard anything awful about this one, we will let you know. And I said, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that support. But while I was talking to the nurse, Gina, and telling her that I'm sad because I have had to go into places this week, and they're places where I don't want to send my mom. And she immediately took a tone with me and she said, no, you listen here. I love Eloise, and Eloise is not going anywhere, and you are not moving her out of this facility. And I said, I beg your pardon? And she said, you are not moving her out of this facility. No more going to care homes, no more looking at skilled nursing facilities. Can you give me a commitment right now that you will not do that again? And she's got her finger out and she's pointing it at me. Give me a commitment that that will not happen again. My Eloise is not leaving this facility. And that's when I knew I don't have a little problem. I have a huge problem. Well, I got weekly phone calls, sometimes a little more often than that, but always no further out than 1 week from the previous one. As my mom's healthcare proxy, I was getting phone calls from the hospice care team nurse that was assigned to her. And then if she wasn't able to call, then one of her close associates would call and, and make that connection with me and go over recent notes of anything that would be of concern to the family, or if they needed a permission for something, anything like that. And I had been so distraught over being spoken to that way. And again, my mom and I had a very open communication. She wanted no secrets. Do not keep anything secret from me. If you're my healthcare proxy, I want to know all of it. Do not talk about it in whispers over there with the nurse. I want the conversation to happen in front of me. And I complied with that almost always. But if it would hurt her, if it would be too much for her nervous system, of course it had to be in private. But I would say about 95% of the time, I was able to honor that for her. So when I had spoke about, going to look at facilities, I said, you're not moving anytime soon, but your care team asked me to do this for you, and I've done it. And just in case you ever need a higher level of care, I have chosen the right place for you that I think would be the only option, the best option for you. And it happens to be, this is a plus, it's not why I chose it, but it happens to be about a 4-minute ride from my home. And she was delighted with that it was all taken care of, nothing to worry about here. Well, the nurse, Gina, said, can I talk to you privately? And I said, sure. And I got up out of my chair and I walked over with her down the hall where she was taking, come on, come over here. And she was very perturbed, very antagonized. And she said, what in the hell are you doing talking to your mother about a possible move from this facility? I told you she's not going anywhere. And I said, with all due respect, you are not my mother's healthcare proxy, and you are not in charge of the decisions. And you were not present when hospice talked to me. And they reaffirmed, I double checked with them after you said that I can't go look at homes. They said, you have a problem on your hands. You're working with a staff member at the care home who is completely out of their lane. They do not have entitlement to tell you what you're going to do, or whether or not your mother is going to live someplace or not live someplace, whether or not she's staying in this facility or anything like that. She has no business doing that. And this was the part that was kind of hard for me. If the rest of it wasn't enough, she said, the hospice care team associate that gave me weekly phone calls and updates, she said, this is absolutely untenable. This is so unhealthy for your mom. It's unhealthy for you. And that resident home, the care home nurse needs to have there needs to be management involved in this. You cannot, this will give you unwellness. I'm just going to put it that way. It'll make you sick to keep dealing with this, and it keeps amping up and amping up and amping up and amping up, because this person was now beginning to go into the realm of coercive control and straight out control. She was exploiting and manipulating every single thing that she could get wedged into to be an influence, and trying to get between me and my mother as the person who cares about her more. I care about you so much, Estelle. Nobody in your family, I'm sorry, I said the wrong name, Eloise. No one in your family cares about you the way I do. No other nurse in this place, Eloise, cares about you the way I do. Well, my mother had a very, very cringy feeling with somebody, just only, it's highly noticeable, only one person in the facility behaving this way. Well, what can we do about that? Here's another example of one that truly happened. I come in, I see my mom, Eloise, sitting in her chair in the lounge. And I went to see her for a second, and I said, I brought some ice cream for us tonight. I'm going to put it inside your fridge, because I had just purchased it out of one of those supermarket freezers, and it was rock solid frozen ice cream. And I get it here, and it's going to thaw a little bit. And she likes her ice cream soft anyway, so it's fine. We'll just stick it in the fridge, and then we'll finish watching Wheel of Fortune. And then when we go to her room to watch a movie together, or watch a YouTube video on something she enjoys or whatever, we'll do that, and she can have some ice cream. Well, the nurse was at the desk, and she heard me tell my mother that I brought ice cream. And what does she do? She leaves the unit, goes through the double doors to an adjacent unit, and comes back in a minute and sits on the arm of my mom's chair in the lounge. And she's got something behind her back. And she says, Eloise, I have something for my favorite resident. And my mom said, what is it? And she goes, ta-da! And she holds her hand out. And it's a little cup of strawberry ice cream with the little wooden spoon inside the paper packet. She heard that I brought ice cream for my mother, and she had to usurp it. She needed to one-up me. She needed to make sure that my feelings were feelings of inadequacy and being irrelevant. She wanted me to feel irrelevant to my mother, and that she would be the most important person. So my mother said, oh, thank you. Oh, that was so thoughtful of you. And she says something like, nothing but the best for my favorite resident. Again, in the lounge, in front of other people. Going off the unit to get ice cream. She didn't get ice cream for anybody else that was sitting in that room. Just for my mom. Why? Because she wanted, when we get to the room, when I say, Mom, would you like some ice cream? My mom's going to say, why would I want ice cream? I already just had some in the lounge. She was canceling part of our special time together. That is highly, highly narcissistic and abusive behavior. It's not abusive to give somebody ice cream. It's not abusive to tell somebody that you like them. It is abusive to tell somebody in a lounge full of residents that they are their favorite, if they hold a care role on the staff at a home. But it's also such narcissistic triangulation. She's doing everything she can to undermine and usurp the relationship between this resident and her adult daughter, and triangulating every single chance she gets, so that she's saying, I love you more than she does, and I'm the better person, and I'm way more attached to you, and you should probably think that I'm better than her. That's what all this means. I treat you better than your daughter does. Your daughter doesn't sit on the arm of your chair with her arm around you, kissing you on your forehead, does she? No, I didn't, because my mom had, you know, she had boundaries about how much physical touch that she would either give or receive. And she could not stand with somebody being what she called clingy. If you're being clingy with me, if you're hanging on me, I'm extremely uncomfortable with that. If you're an inappropriate toucher, and it doesn't have to be sexual in nature, it could be just too close, inside your bubble, so to speak. But an antagonistic person, a highly narcissistic person, they love doing that stuff. They can't get enough of making you squirm, make you uncomfortable. And they can do it all under the guise of, oh, I just love you so much. I just want to be with you. I just want to touch you. I want to be on or in the same chair with you. Well, when I had to talk to the hospice nurse about this, she said, how are things going? And I said, well, we have a problem. And I'm not sure it's appropriate for me to talk about it with you because it has nothing to do with hospice. It has everything to do with the staff nurse at the care home. And she said, you don't need to go any further. I know exactly who you're speaking about. And I said, wow, how can you know that? And she said, we're in there often. And I have noticed that your mother has been singled out by a staff nurse to be treated in overtly favoritism sort of way. And I said, that's exactly right. Yes, we're talking about the same individual. And she said, do you want to tell me what has been going on? And when I told her the examples of what had gone on, and being told that I cannot take her out of there and put her in a skilled nursing facility, even when it's time, when she needs to move to a higher level of care, that this nurse has told me, you need to give me a reassurance and a promise right now that you are not going to remove Eloise from this care home. You are not taking my Eloise away from me. She's staying right here. And she said she has no right to do that. This has to be reported to management. And she said, would you like me to call them and give them an outline of what's been happening? And that way they can call you, but they've been a little bit informed. And if it comes from me, a registered nurse with a hospice specialty, it's going to help them understand that this is serious and it's not you being emotional or petty. This is a real concern. And she said, you don't have to let me do that, but I'm offering to do that. And I said, thank you. Yes, I accept. That will help things a lot, because I have a feeling that if it was just me going in the office, it would be brushed off and they won't listen to me. They will not take it seriously. She said, that's why I offered. So she did it. And the next day that I went to visit my mom, the next visit that I went to later, this was in the morning, the phone conversation with the hospice nurse. And I get to the facility, usual time, like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. And that nurse is waiting for me at the front door, standing there with her arms crossed, just tapping her toe on the floor and waiting for me. And when I walk in, she's just standing there doing that and bobbing her head back and forth, just staring me down while I'm signing in. And I asked this question, were you waiting for me? And she said, yeah. And I said, is something wrong with my mom? Is she okay? Because I thought they might not want me to see that she has an injury or something. And they're trying to head me off at the door and say, she had a fall just before you got here or whatever. And, she might have a bruised forehead or something. No, it wasn't about my mom's, she didn't have an incident. She wasn't sick. What this woman said to me was, what are you doing talking to management about me? She said, I want to know right now every single word you said against me to management. So, because I got called in an office and apparently you have a problem with me. And I want to know what gave you the right to go to management and talk about me to get me in trouble. And she said, I have been so nice to you and I absolutely adore your mother. I have treated both of you with such respect and dignity. And you have the nerve to go behind my back and cause problems for me at work. What is wrong with you? I mean, she's completely toxic shaming me. Where? Right out in the open, right in front of the, the desk, the receptionist. Right in front of the receptionist, there's an open lounge adjacent to the receptionist desk. Residents and family are there. She's calling me out on the carpet right in front of other people, completely disrespecting me, and also completely disrespecting my mother, because she's again stating, I've treated your mother beautifully. You have no right to do this to me. And I said, I'm not having this conversation with you. And she blocked me with her body as I tried to go past. She didn't touch me, but she kind of jumped in front of me. And she's like, you are not going anywhere. I asked you a question and you're going to answer it. And I said, you absolutely believe that that's going to happen, and you are mistaken. And I just went, got my mom, took her to her room, and spent the evening with her. And I was in a completely humiliated and embarrassed and angry, small t traumatized state. Now, I had to figure out, what is the next step? What do I do about this? Because she had no right to talk to me as if I was subservient to her, telling me what I had better do. It's ridiculous. And I owed her absolutely no explanation. And if I ever did have one, it should have been inside of an office, but that wasn't going to happen. She had no right. She has absolutely no authority over me, and no right to call me into the office or to, to lay me out in front of all these people, to take that tone and make demands on me and tell me that I better start explaining to her. Well, after that, I did have to go to management and say, she stopped me at the door after she got called into the office to be asked about her behavior towards my mother and me. And this has risen to an intolerable level. And I should not feel sickness and dread driving in the car on the way to go into that building. This has been going on for months now. I feel sick when I'm on the way here because I want this time with my mom. She does have a terminal illness, I might remind you. And for the family or my mother to be harassed in any way by any person inside the building or on the grounds is unacceptable. And this needs to stop immediately. Well, what happened was they did take some disciplinary action against her, very minor disciplinary action. And they wouldn't tell me what it was, but they just said it was minor because she doesn't have a history of being brought in for disciplinary action, and they can't, they have to work their way up the chain of, so you start with the small interaction, and then if that's doesn't resolve the problem, then you go to the next level or whatever. But they most certainly weren't going to let her go. And so what ended up happening is I told them every conversation that I had had and told, you cannot take her out of this, this facility, you cannot send her to a skilled nursing facility, even if hospice tells you this is imminent, she needs to be moved. You have to have a place that has screened her and everything, and she's going to be moved. And they said, well, you know what, we are not supposed to be doing that with people. I felt like saying, no, it's gross to be doing that to people. So the management did not support me in my complaint. They absolutely did not. But then after I went in person to speak to the manager of this building, what happened then was, of course, the nurse was spoken to again. Okay, Gina was spoken to again. And then I come in the building and now I'm getting the stink eye, and I'm getting much more aggressive, inappropriate touching, encroaching language, all this stuff being done to my mom. She's using my mother to punish me. She started referring to my mom, gave her a nickname of Sexy. Yeah, my 87-year-old mother was being referred to by a nurse in a care home as sexy. How you doing, sexy? And she would sit on the arm of her chair and start rubbing her back if I was there. And then she would just be kind of embracing her and smelling her hair and kissing her forehead, touching her face. And I know that my mom absolutely cannot stand that stuff. She just absolutely cannot. And she was doing this to be antagonistic. And I got to the point where I had to say, your inappropriate touching of my mother's person is unacceptable. You need to stop. And I don't mind going back into management's office to tell them the date and the time and the location of where you were doing this inappropriate behavior towards my mother. Please don't push me to that point. And she did not back off. And then she went out on a medical. She was out for a few weeks. And my mom passed away while she was on medical leave. And the day after my mother passed, this nurse called me. Her number was in my phone because during COVID, she was using her phone to help the residents FaceTime with their family members, which was lovely. It was very nice. She got called into management's office. She told me this. I got called into management's office so many times because I was told you can't use your personal phone with the residents to call anybody. You can't do that. If you're going to contact somebody and you're going to use one of our phones, it's not going to be on video unless you have use of one of the iPads. And every unit was given iPads so that they could hold that or have it in a stand in front of them. And the the staff would put, put in the call to your family member so that you can see them on screen face to face and have that conversation. So they had already facilitated the way, and everybody had been in service on the way. You're going to use video conferencing with the resident's family member, but you're not using your personal phones. Well, when she called my number and said, I have somebody who wants to talk to you, and she would hold her phone, and my mom was holding her, Gina's phone, and we were able to have a conversation, but several times there was no privacy. She would stand there. I could hear her. I could see part of her uniform in the shot, and I knew she was still there, but I had put her in as a contact in my phone, so I would recognize that as an incoming FaceTime from my mom at the care home, because my mom didn't have a cell phone. So one day after my mom passed, I got a phone call from her that I ignored. Gina called me up personally while she's not at work. She is out of that capacity right now. And she wants to know, when is my mother's funeral service and where will it be? And I said, it's private, and I hung up. She did not take the hint from that. Well, that's not a hint. That's just flat out telling her, this is private, which we have every right to have a private funeral. Every single family has the right to have either public or a private funeral. And so a little while after that, I got a text from her. And the text is telling me, I loved your mother so much. I'm absolutely devastated. I'm in absolute grief over losing her. And I really, really need to talk to you. Now that to me is putting a demand on a person who's in grief from losing her only remaining parent. And she's making me be the support person for her, talking about her grief and how hard it's going to be for her, and that she really needs to be at that funeral. And I just went into my phone and blocked her, and then just went on with my day. Because there are certain things that highly narcissistic people can't get enough of. And that is completely screwing with major life events, births, weddings, graduations, funerals, purchasing a home, things like that. They just absolutely cannot keep their fingers out of somebody else's pie. And so what Gina was doing in this situation was she was letting me know, just because your mom went non-physical doesn't mean that you get to escape me and my influence and control over you. Oh, heck no. No, you're still going to deal with me. And I loved her more than anybody else in the world. And therefore, I'm going to hold a very significant role in this. And I knew immediately that was going to be her saying to me, I'm giving the eulogy. I already have had it written for 7 months. I wrote it long ago because I knew I was going to be at her feet. I just could hear this stuff. It's like in the queue. It's being aimed at me, and she's ready to just send them to me one after another, just shooting those things right across, Western New York at me, because she wants to dominate and control. And it could also have been very much to do with revenge, because highly narcissistic people who are really truly disordered with narcissistic behavior, their behavior is just off the wall sometimes. And one of the things that they will do is disguise revenge as care. Oh, I have some things I want to drop off for you. You're in grief. I want to bring you a deli platter. Yeah, it could be a deli platter of revenge. It could have something in it. It could be messed with. Or it could just be a tool used to coerce and control you. So I figured right now, this is the exact moment that I need to shut this down immediately. I had to go into that care home while my mother was alive. I wanted to be with my mom. But as soon as she left this world, there was not one single reason for me to ever walk into that space or have anything to do with that facility ever again. When I reached out to management and told them this is intolerable, they pushed back on it and said, well, she's one of our best nurses, and we just don't think that she's doing anything out of line. And the hospice nurse said, this is gross. This is absolutely grotesque, what you're telling us. And I have not told you in this video all of the stuff that was done, but there was plenty. There was absolutely plenty. And one of the things that I found to be completely irksome was when she came into my mom's room one night. This is just shortly before she passed away, before she went out on medical. And she said, it's like a few weeks before. And she said, if you don't mend fences with your siblings, because she knew I was full no contact with all my siblings. That was why I came every evening, so my family could go in the daytime. They're not going to bump into me. I'm not going to be locking horns with them. I'm just keeping my side of the street clean. And so I know that some of my family members go to bed real early, and I would be at the care home with mom, most likely at the time where they're in their jammies watching TV and then going to bed. And it was peaceful. I just wanted it that way. My mom liked it too, because she had daytime people and a nighttime person who was coming in. But what this person was letting me know is that she felt that me being no contact with my family was inappropriate, especially because we were going to be, and she was like this, winking at me and saying, dealing with some really difficult things in the near future, meaning your mom's going to die. There's going to be a funeral. And I don't want there to be bad blood between this family. I need to fix this now. And what she said to me was, I think you need to mend some fences with your family because they're very nice people. And they don't deserve what you're doing to them. that is a massive boundary cross. So insinuating yourself into someone's family dynamics and you're a professional in a care home, it is absolutely unacceptable. And I said to her, have you been speaking to my relatives about this? Have you been talking about my relationship with my siblings? And she says, well, of course it comes up. Yeah, that's a big, huge yes. Sticking her fingers into somebody else's pie, manipulating and exploiting the situation, and always having a desired outcome and expecting other people to come along with her desired outcome for them and for herself, involving you and your family, which is completely private and none of a care home nurse's business. Whether or not you mend fences before that person is put into their resting place, I should say. It's none of that staff member's business, whether or not the family has anybody who's no contact with anybody. It is just absolutely none of their business. So all of this behavior is extremely antagonistic and narcissistic behavior, which is highly traumatizing. And let's just go one step further with that and say, would a healthy person, would a healthy human do that to somebody who's in the process of late stage Alzheimer's or any serious terminal illness? Would they ever do that? Would they ever go out of their way to antagonize them or their family members that come to visit? No healthy human does that. We would want to be a facilitator for whatever that resident's needs are, and a facilitator for reasonable requests from the family. But antagonism should never, ever, ever, ever be part of the mix. So there's an article that I found. This is an AI overview, and oh, it just went away. I'm sorry, I have to re-find it. Okay. So there is, I'm sorry, I lost my article and I can't find it. But what I will say here is this video has run long, so I'm just going to say, if you put in a Google search for dealing with narcissistic nurses, there are articles that will come up, and they are not just Quora digest articles. These are published actual articles from mental health professionals, and you will be able to see that there is resource for you if you've ever dealt with a very highly narcissistic person within a healthcare system, and they're completely invasive and they're completely violating of your rights and your boundaries. And so that person that I spoke about made going through the process of losing my mother exponentially worse. The days that I was driving in, or the evenings that I was driving over to see her, I should not have been filled with dread about what that person's going to do this time. I've only scratched the surface in this video. There were hundreds of incidents of things like what I described. And it was to the point where my mom was, as soon as she'd exit her room, and she'd wait for the door to click and shut all the way, and then she would just look at me and say, I can't stand her. Is there any way you can keep her from coming near me? And I said, I already tried with management. I've even asked for her to just please be moved off the unit. It's inappropriate to allow this to continue to happen. And they said, she's not doing anything that we could write her up for. I said, kissing my mom on the forehead, saying I love you, and calling my mother her favorite resident. You don't think that's inappropriate? Like, some of the people here, it's the only affection they get. And I'm like, You can be plenty affectionate without being in that person's personal bubble and lingering there. It's just not necessary. It's uncomfortable. But anyways, yeah, it was traumatic for my mom. No doubt about it. It was absolutely traumatizing her. And I did see the emotional and psychological after effects of having this go on for a couple of years. Some of you might be asking, why didn't you just take her and move her from there? Because the power of attorney would never have approved it. That she would never, ever, ever have approved that, especially if it was my idea, because she's an extremely hostile, highly narcissistic person. Lots of antisocial traits within her. So if you've had experiences like this, no, it wasn't your imagination. You can trust your gut. You can trust your inner being and your feelings, and it doesn't steer you wrong. When you feel that there's something about this person that's intolerable, it's because it is. It's because you can trust yourself. You know what you know, you heard what you heard, you saw what you saw, you felt what you felt. And it's inarguable. You don't have to second guess yourself about it. If it feels icky, it's because it is. If it feels creepy, it's because it is. And you don't have to verify it with anybody else. You can trust you. The things that we need to do through something like that is communication, of course, but there also needs to be a really a solid set of boundaries. And the same thing that I always say is lots and lots and lots of self-care. So communication with management, excellent boundaries, excellent self-care. And sadly, the recognition is this cannot go on forever. If we are powerless to change the situation, and at that time I was, then what can I do to mitigate some of the stuff that's the most awful about this? How can I get in between that person and my mom to make it so that the opportunity just went away? We're going off the unit. We're spending the evening outside. It's a beautiful evening. We're going to be outside anyways. Usually from April all the way through October, we were outside for many of our visits, for the greatest part of the visit. And then we'd come in and have to have some interactions, but at least it wasn't for the whole time. But there are lots of things. We can become very creative. Most important thing is to remain calm. It's hard to do, though, working with a situation like that. And then put some creativity into the different ways that we can come up with that will either distract or disengage. Physical space in between you is great. And just gentle reminders, gentle reminders that I kept telling myself, this can't possibly go on forever. My mom is declining in her health and she's going to go non-physical. And then all of this antagonism will stop. It will be over. Or so I thought. I didn't know that I would be getting a couple contacts from her in my phone where she's just trying to reach her extremely, miles long arm from several towns over to still stick her fingers into my beautiful slice of pie. No, we don't have to live that way. This has been a really good conversation. I hope that it helped you. This is about when you have a professional who is highly narcissistic in your life, and you have to deal with that situation. You can't just say, well, I'm not going there anymore. It's a situation where you have to be involved, and it can feel extremely traumatic, but there's help. There's lots of help. If you have had similar experiences and you're looking for a certified trauma recovery coach to help you, I am available for one-on-one sessions on Zoom. And for people who are local to me, I do in-person sessions. And you can reach me at you can find me at linbouthillier.com. You can email me, lynn@linbouthillier.com, or you can call my phone. It's 716-994-3052. I would absolutely love to hear from you if I could be of help for you on your trauma recovery journey. Please remember, self-care is never, ever selfish. It is essential to our well-being, and you are infinitely worthy of your own trauma recovery. Have the best day, everyone.